Good night and welcome to Mindful Live 165. I am your host, Nathan Springer. Thank you for being here. It is the 6th of January in the year of our Lord 2023. The 6th is a beautiful day. The 6th is a beautiful day. On the 6th of every month, my baby girl goes 1 month older. You know, it's a good day. It's a good day. It's a good signal of a day. And it's 2 days away from my birthday. I'm going to be turning 30 earlies this Sunday coming here. Yes. So it's a lovely time of the year, January, that most wonderful month of the year. You know, it's first up there. I know regularly people complain about the 120 days of January, but you know, I happen to enjoy my long month. I say, if someone is selecting a position to come in, you want to select a position you want to come in out of 12. Of course, you're going to select first. Number one must be the best. So January, the best month of the year, is now here. Welcome to the Mindful Live. We're talking today, at least we're starting talking today, talking about the new president that we have at least named by our government. One Miss Christine Kangaloo, the second woman in a row following Paula May Weeks to very likely serve as president. Now, she isn't yet confirmed as president. So we could be a bit hasty on that, but understanding how our politics runs, you understand that very likely she is going to be the next president, because the government has the most votes in the electoral college. The electoral college, I believe, is the MPs and the senators, and the government has the most votes there. They control the most votes. So obviously, generally speaking, who the government wants, the government is going to get. You know, in and of itself, I think I'm going to do a bit of a video on that later. In and of itself, the idea that the government automatically controls all of the government's votes isn't exactly how the system is meant to run, you know. Like, right now in the United States, they have a bit of a stalemate in selecting a speaker, because the Speaker of the House has to be voted on by the members of their Congress. You could think of their Congress kind of like their MPs in a sense, more like their councillors of each district. And they go through and they select their speaker based on the majority. Now, it's kind of given that whichever party has the most candidates in that house, that party is going to select the speaker. That should be automatic. But it has been a bit different now. It has been a bit different this year with the most recent election, where the Republicans won the most seats in Congress, but the Republican pick for the House speakership isn't automatically winning all the votes. I believe they may be in the double digits of votes right now, trying to get him to win all the votes, because all members of the Republican Party are saying that we don't automatically want to back this candidate. He doesn't represent our constituents. And I think that's a good thing. All over on so many of the news stations, so many pundits you hear talking about politics, and you're hearing them talking about the political system is in disarray, and these are rebellious, and these are insurrectionists in their own sense. But I think that's kind of how the political system is meant. It isn't meant that all of the MPs that are UNC MPs are supposed to automatically do everything that the UNC party does. As an MP, ideally, you are supposed to be a representative for your constituents. So an MP really and truly is supposed to be a representation of what the people that voted for him or her wants to happen. So really and truly, what the MP for Couva North votes for in Parliament is supposed to be what the majority of constituents in Couva North want to happen. Not necessarily what automatically the UNC wants to happen. Unfortunately, that's not the way our politics functions. Unfortunately, it's partisan by nature. You get to select them around election time, but you don't really get to select the decisions they make. The decisions they make are based on the party politics. The party selects that, and you tell the party thank you for whatever they shovel out for you. That's the system we consider democracy right now. Ain't that a thing? And in that whole system, these people that are representatives of their constituents, or are supposed to be representatives of their constituents, get to vote for the president of our country. And they are set to vote very soon for one, very likely, Miss Christine Kangaloo. Let's jump over to that story over there. If you are looking at this live on TikTok or on Instagram, you can feel free at any point in time to jump over to my YouTube channel, Nathan Springer. Be sure to subscribe over there. You can catch the lives on repeat. You could see them how many ever times you want. Any of the articles that you hear me reading, you could see them scrolling behind me and keep up with what I'm reading and etc. And there are other videos out there too. There's a conversation already there, and it's a series that I have begun. More conversations are in the pipeline, soon to be released, so head over there and be sure to subscribe to Nathan Springer over there on YouTube. Alright, so government proposes Kangaloo as president. Opposition objects. No surprise really on the opposition objecting when you think about it. Current Senate President Christine Kangaloo has been put forward as the sole nominee for president of TNT. Opposition leader Kamla Prasad Bisesa has said. Prasad Bisesa said the opposition is concerned that an active politician is being considered and have therefore objected to the appointment. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley is meeting with Prasad Bisesa for discussions regarding the appointment of a person to serve as president of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Kamala on president, she says, we have a name, but not ready to share. Opposition leader Kamla Prasad Bisesa has described the decision of the government to nominate Senate President Christine Kangaloo for the position of president as an attempt to undermine the democracy of TNT. She addressed a news conference this afternoon at her Charles Street office in Port of Spain, but said the opposition was not yet ready to name its nominee. We do have a name, she said, adding that because it was a private citizen, she wasn't yet ready to name the person. She said she will share the name with the Prime Minister. You see that line that Mrs. Prasad Bisesa said there? I think that's a key factor in the whole breaking down of how we generally choose presidents in Trinidad and Tobago. Now, our president is more of a figurehead. They're more ceremonial than powerful. They don't have all that much power. I remember what Mr. President Kamuna, when he was there, he made a speech talking about the powers that the president has. Some people don't believe the president has, and the power that the president doesn't have. Some people think a whole convoluted thing like that. The president actually doesn't have that much power, and a lot of what the president does have power over is more of an overseer power. It's not like they can make that decision on their own. They are making the decisions that they make in conjunction with the Prime Minister or the opposition leader, etc., etc., etc. However, that ceremonial head is still an important position because, at least historically, the idea is that we have this executive person, this worker out there in the ministerial portfolio, the Prime Minister. They're out there working and trying to get the everyday things of the country done, while we attempt to select someone that is, for the most part, above reproach. You know, generally speaking, the majority of the country looks up to this person. They respect them as an honorable member, an upstanding member of the country, of the citizenry, and then that's the person that is the figurative head of state. So we could feel kind of comfortable that, all right, maybe there might be a bit of a cantankerous person getting the job done as Prime Minister, but the person above it all signing off these documents, you know, in case things start to go haywire, there is somebody with a level head that everyone in the country can look towards, that they have a certain level of respect for. That was the idea of the president, and it came from the Governor General in the times gone before, who would have been not only the figurehead head of state, but they were a representative of the King or Queen of England in the country. And that's kind of giving the country that feel of authority. There is a higher figure here that you can look to beside just the prime minister. It's not just that prime minister, the leadership, although the prime minister has the executive power of getting things done in the country, there is still someone even above them that is above them in ranking in terms of the hierarchy of the country. I understand that idea, and to me, that kind of separation makes some sense. It makes some sense. What it does allow for is the removal of the prime minister as king kind of behavior. You don't have generally you wouldn't have the ability for the head of state of a country where we have that split between prime minister and president. You wouldn't have the ability for the head of state there to become the de facto king in that country. So in the United States, they're struggling with that right now. Many of their presidents now, to some extent, become the de facto king. Their presidents now rule to a great extent by executive order, which is basically a decree, like a king. And the support they get is getting more and more fanatical on the pro side, so similar to a king. But if you have that kind of separation, the ceremonial side isn't the guy with the power, and then the guy with the power isn't the ceremonial side. So when you insult the leader of the country, you're not insulting the ceremonial leader. You could say that this country is going to the dogs, but at the same time you could still look up towards the head of state. That's the general principle of our separation between the president and prime minister. However, a problem that we are falling into here in Trinidad and Tobago is the increasing divide in partisanship in this country. The opposition leader said that she has a name, but because the person was a private citizen, she wasn't yet ready to name the person. And here's why. The nature of our politics. People are aware. When you are named by one political side, the other side, you stand a high likelihood of that other side dragging you through the mud. And I find it very curious that the opposition leader speaks about this, because to me, if I'm being honest about it, looking at Trinidad and Tobago politics, the opposition seems to be the specialists at this. Anyone that is named by the government to do anything is going to be insulted as a government stooge by the opposition. Even any private citizen. I regularly look at this, and people regularly warn about this in this country. The way how the partisan politicians attack people chosen by the other side, you make it difficult for private citizens to render their services to the government. Would you want to be someone named by the PNM as their nominee for president? What do you think is going to happen if you are named as the PNM as their nominee for president? What do you think the opposition leader is going to say about you? Do you remember what the opposition leader had to say about the chief medical officer during the pandemic? Some of the very distasteful words they had for him, calling him a political stooge, etc., etc. And these things make it more difficult for independent, educated people, qualified people in the country to go up for certain positions. It's not as appealing. If you are making enough money, you have enough credit in your work sphere, why are you going to put yourself in the public line of fire like that? What's the interest in that? And then, if you do that, look at the predicament we put ourselves in now, where when you're looking for a position like the president, where you would have benefited from a neutral, more respectable member of society being able to be put forward by the government, we would have benefited from that. But very likely many of those people in society now wouldn't want to go up there. The Noor Hassan Alis of present time. Would you want to go up there? And if that might be the case, then we may be able to understand why the government would do something like recommending basically an active politician. And I might understand why they might want to do that, because people outside of the political sphere do not want the job, or they may be more worried about what may be said about them in the job. But then look at what we do. We put in that position as president, which was supposed to be that neutral, stands above it all position, we put an active politician who is basically just a government appointee. So eventually the seat of president is going to be watered down from what it is supposed to be. Now bear in mind, in the constitution they can have written whatever they want to be written about the president, but the seat of president in this country, the office of president, what it represents is dependent on how the citizens view it, how the people of the country view it. And if the people of the country view the president as just another political appointee, then that's what the office of the president is going to be. No one is going to view this as when the prime minister goes to speak to the president and gets advice from the president on a decision, we look at it as the prime minister got some independent analysis on this topic. No, the prime minister basically went to the cabinet. He went to his own group, his own tribe, his own club. And that's what we're going to view the president as. I hope the government understands this, that in what they're doing now, and I think since Mr. Carmona was in the president's job, in that president's position, I think that office of the president has changed. The way the citizens view the office of the president has changed. It's no longer at that kind of level that it once was. I don't think it is. I think that entire office has already changed in how the citizens view it. And we don't view it anymore as this neutral, above it all office. And I hope the government understands that the decision they are making now is just pushing the office of the president, pushing the office of the president further down that road. I mean, this isn't a knock personally on Miss Christine Kangaloo. I do not know the woman personally like that, but who is going to see her as an independent mind? Now, I see people talk about A&R Robinson. He came directly out of the political life and into the office of the president, and that is true. But Mr. Robinson still was a bit different from Miss Kangaloo. He was a statesman. That's someone you'd call more of a statesman. He evidently wasn't just partisan in how he viewed things. He was someone instrumental in writing laws, in writing legislation around not just the country, around the world. In fact, I believe he was integral in the International Court or someone of those too. So you could look at him, and yes, being in active politics is one, but you could look at him as a larger figure than just an active politician. I don't think I see that in Miss Kangaloo. I don't look at Miss Kangaloo and see a stateswoman extraordinaire, someone who seems like their main business is the business of the country. I see someone who is a faithful PNM politician. May not be the worst of them, but they are a partisan politician. That is who they are. And I don't think the office of president is going to change that view at all. But the reality is that is how presidents are chosen in Trinidad and Tobago. When we're talking about the government undermining the democracy of the country or something like that, not exactly. That's how the democracy is done in the country. That's how democracy is done here. The government basically has the choice in that matter. The government chooses. But you understand then the farce, the facade it is when we hear people talking about independent offices in the country, when they say that this office is independent because it was chosen by the president. And then you recognize, but the president is chosen by the government. So the government chooses the president, and then the president somehow is an independent office holder who is going to select people to put into places all independently and all of that good stuff. Right. Sure, of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We all believe this. Yes, yes, of course we do. All right, all right. What's your view on our new president? What's your view? Are you excited to welcome in a new president? Are you indifferent about it? Do you just not care anymore? Whoever the president is inconsequential to you. What do you think on that? As per usual, we are sponsored by Mindful Education. If you are looking for classes, learning pods starting from from preschool ages going straight up to CXC and CAPE levels, get into contact with us on Instagram or on Facebook. Hit us a message there. Registration is now open for all classes. We do private tutoring, also one-on-one tutoring at the location of your choosing for most CXC and CAPE subjects. So hit us up for that if you are also interested. And on the topic of education, I was seeing recently that the teachers drove out of a school in Trinidad and Tobago. The teachers were like, yeah, this isn't what we're being paid for. They picked up themselves and they were like, we're out. Yep. Teachers in drive out protests. Teachers in drive-out protest after parent robbed, threatened to stop work at dilapidated St. Joseph Secondary. One day after the parent of a St. Joseph Secondary School student was robbed just outside the school's compound at gunpoint, teachers drove out of the compound sounding their horns as they expressed their frustration over the failure by the Ministry of Education to address health and safety issues at the school. At about 12:20 p.m. yesterday, teachers boarded their cars, started their engines, and lined up in front of the schoolyard as the MTS security officers opened the huge front gate. Teachers drove out of the compound with their lights switched on and honked their horns as they drove away along Farm Road. Students were sent home 10 minutes later with no teachers to either teach or supervise them. Ha! Listen, the school system in Trinidad seems to be, sometimes when you look at particularly the government school system, it seems to be teetering and tottering on a knife's edge. The office has been a ceremonial one for decades, and it's tainted by both sides, so it doesn't make a difference, Adish Ramnarayan says, I believe speaking about the office of the president. But yeah, the violence in schools has been a problem, a plague on the country for a while now, and the reality is violence is being seen all over the country at high levels. It's being seen all over the country at high levels, and it's just a matter of time before it overflows and spills more into the schools. That's just the next area where it's going to go. And when you're understanding that the violence, a lot of the criminality in Trinidad and Tobago is caused by the presence and prevalence of gangs and gang fighting, gang warfare. That's where a lot of our criminality is surrounded. And if you look at where gangs get the most of their strength, their numbers from, it's from young men. A lot of young school-age men. So if gangs are prevalent in the country, then the presence of criminality inside of the school compound really isn't a surprise. Lots of these young men may be involved in gang activities while going to school. How many times have you seen when someone is shot and they say it was gang related? It's someone in their teen years. So these guys are going to school. And what are the teachers going to do with that in school? At St. Joseph, there, I believe this story is right outside of the compound. A student's parent came to drop some money for them. A parent came Tuesday to drop off money for his child and was held up at gunpoint outside of the school and robbed at gunpoint. Almost on a daily basis, children are robbed by people hiding in the overgrown bushes, either at gunpoint or knife point. There were a few cases in the compound during school hours. That is just insane. Imagine I'm sending my beautiful little child that I've invested countless hours and countless sums of money into. I'm sending them to an institute where I'm hoping that they will be getting educated. They will be filling their minds with useful information that when they get older, they will be able to take that information, use it in the world, and it will be beneficial to them. That's why I'm sending them to that building. That's the purpose I'm sending them there, to get information into their brains. And then they're being held up at gunpoint and knife point. You're understanding? Every time someone holds you up at gunpoint or knife point, that's in a sense a threat to your life. They're threatening to kill you. At gunpoint, the person is basically telling you, they may be literally telling you, but if they don't tell you in those clear words, and most people understand this very quickly, if someone points the gun at you, it's understood they're telling you, I am going to kill you if you do not give me what I want you to give me. That's what they're telling you. And you're sending your children to school, and that is happening. That is far out. That is far out. I think, though, some of these things would be difficult to pull back now. They may just be very difficult to pull back. The police, regularly the police talk about how overworked they are, how stretched they are. They're already stretched to the limit, they're trying their best. If the police is stretched to the limit and trying their best, would they be able to police enough schools? The problem is, in a country, the problem is, you never really want crime to become out of control. When crime becomes out of control, these are the things that happen. With the, how many police we have? 7,000? Couple thousand police that we have. With the couple thousand police we have, we do not have enough manpower to police crime if everyone with criminal ideation in their mind decides to go act on it. What we depend on in society is that people are deterred enough from wanting to do criminal things that the police are able to only focus on the very worst of them. But if the country is so out of control that criminality begins to spiral, and more people get involved in crime, it will just be a numbers game that we will not be able to win. If you look, for example, I was looking in Mexico. In Mexico, they tried again, they arrested again El Chapo's son, a leader in the Sinaloa cartel, one of the biggest drug cartels in the world and in Mexico. And El Chapo has already been arrested. He was arrested and he escaped prison like 2 or 3 times in Mexico. Then they eventually extradited him to the United States. As a cartel boss, as a cartel don, that's kind of what you don't want. You want to stay in South America, in Central America. There, you don't want the extradition to the United States. That's kind of the full stop for you, for a lot of them. So, they already have El Chapo, the head of the Sinaloa cartel, well, the reputed head of the Sinaloa cartel. His son, one Ovidio, something like that, his name is. They arrested him sometime earlier, was that 2019 or something like that, and the cartel started to burn things down from a side. They started to burn down Mexico, basically, and they had to release the man. They arrested him again recently. Was it Tuesday or sometime this week? They arrested him. And the cartel has declared war on the Mexican government. That's when criminality is out of control in your country. That's when criminality is out of control. I was watching, and you know, in Trinidad, we spoke about this yesterday. In Trinidad, our government, the PNM government, is really strong on the whole gun control thing, you know. They don't want the citizens to get too many guns, you know. They're afraid of that. All 4 murders in 4 years with legal firearms has our government petrified. The 600 murders is not the main problem to them. It's those legal firearms. Be very worried, especially the assault weapons. Like, that's a danger among private citizens. In Mexico, they have really strong gun control too. There's one gun store in Mexico that you could buy legal guns from. One. And it's on a military base, so well guarded. And I was watching videos of cartel members shooting anti-material guns at aircrafts. Airplanes taking off at airports are being shot at by anti-aircraft and anti-material guns by these cartel members. What's going on with the gun control? How is it that you have videos with little children in Mexico strapped up with AK-47s? I thought guns were illegal. How did they get these guns? The illegal guns? They're getting illegal guns? Oh my goodness. Who would have thought? But yeah, that's when crime is out of control. The criminals can literally declare war on the government. They're creating roadblocks. The military has to try and escape from the cartel in certain places. You're watching a fleet of vans pass with machine guns mounted on the trays, and you're like, hey, is that a regiment platoon? No, it is not. Those are cartel members. That's criminality out of control. The gangs have become as strong or stronger than the military. Yes, last night we were speaking about in Trinidad the kind of guns that some of the criminals are getting, and people were talking about the police being outgunned. I'd say in Mexico what you see are the police being outgunned. That's where you see the police are outgunned there. The amount of money that flows through the cartel, it's just not possible for the police to keep up with the kind of equipment that they have. Parent Michael Rampersad, who noticed media personnel outside the school's compound, did not hold back his frustration. Rampersad said his daughter attends the school but is scared due to the robberies. She is too scared because of the violence that takes place that I have to drop her and pick her up. Today, Wednesday, I got a call from her telling me that something is going on to come pick her up, so I did, Rampersad said. But it is really impossible with parents to handle this situation. Since last year, the ministry was saying a lot of things and nothing has been done to curb the violence. Imagine, police have to be here to control children, and what else wouldn't happen now? At the back of the existing school is the shell of what was supposed to be a new school building. Everything that was inside, including iron, metal rods and electrical fittings, has been stolen. Construction on the building commenced in 2011, and just a few years ago, according to the teacher, it was at 95% complete. Today, that building is 35% complete because thieves struck over the years and vandalized the building and stole almost everything from it. What remains now is the shell, which is overgrown with bushes and has 8-foot high bushes all around it. So much taxpayers' money gone on this project, and the ministry is not doing anything about it. For years, we have been neglected. Both the teachers and pupils are fed up, the teacher said. And I think it's sensible to keep in mind when they said that school building started 2011. For those of us who understand how politics runs in Trinidad and Tobago, 2011 was another political party in power. And what we see so often, unfortunately, in Trinidad and Tobago is that some political parties do not want to carry on projects of the previous party to not allow them to look good. I hope it's not something like that. But you must wonder what is causing a school building to be unable to be finished from 2011 to 2023. That's what, 12 years? In 12 years, you're telling me it's impossible to finish a school building? What kind of school is that, pray tell? And where are the answers on things like this? Like, to me, that's something that could be answered. Like, all right, we're looking at the criminality now, and as I said before, if you look at the criminality in that school, in many places in Trinidad, it's something that has grown over time. And even now, when we're trying to stop it, we're trying to stop the horse that has already bolted from the stable. So For example, in that school, part of the reason crime and criminality will be so prevalent there is it's obviously not being paid attention to a lot. If you have a building that is reversing in progress, the building was 95% complete, it is now 35% complete, it is reversing in progress. That means people are able to carry in vehicles and steal things from that building and drive out. Obviously, they aren't paying much attention to the facility. And there's a principle used in law enforcement where they talk about the broken windows policy. And many people don't like it because generally it becomes much more stringent on the ghetto people. But it's a sound principle. The idea is, if you look at a building and it has broken windows, the chances are higher that something else might be wrong with the building. So the idea is that you look for the small infractions, small things going wrong in whatever you're looking at, and you pay serious attention to the small things, and that actually works to stop the larger things from happening. So I would wager, if serious attention was placed to the vandalism in that school to such an extent that the school was protected enough to stop the vandalism and theft, then maybe the theft and robbery of the students on the school compound would have been something harder to happen also. But if theft was allowed from the property, then it's one step further for theft to be allowed from the people on the property. Kafka says we can't drag the whole government itself before AGSC and ask them all these questions. No, unfortunately, we can't. We could drag a representative from the Minister of Education, but not the entire government. I think if we vote PNM more, it will solve all the problems. I suppose you mean to be sarcastic by that, Mr. or Mrs. User 56 something. And I get your sarcasm, but the unfortunate thing for me when I see many people talk about, well, PNM being the problem, or if we vote PNM we'll get more of that, or why we should vote PNM, or PNM doing the problem I have with that is very often the people that are saying that have the idea that somehow another three-letter political corporation is going to have the solution for the country, and I don't have that kind of hope. I'm not saying one has it or one doesn't. I'm saying that they don't. That's the position I'm saying. They don't. And the problem we often have is we look to them for the solutions, and that's why we often end up in the predicaments that we end up in. And that's part of the reason why I so regularly talk about things like the firearm user licenses, because I think that people could have a bigger part to play in protecting themselves. It seems to me cruel for our government, so we continue to do the same thing over and over and over and expect a different result. What is the same thing that you are talking about? Like, what differently would you like to do? Would you like to vote for someone differently now? Who is the someone differently that you'd like to vote for? And do you think voting for someone differently is going to give us a different result? Is voting for someone differently doing the same thing over and over? Isn't that what Tobago has done, and they expected a different result and they got the same result? My problem is, very often people try to speak like, yes, the politics is the problem here, while really and truly you're trying to say that you like UNC, which is not a problem. Be bold with whichever party you support, grand, but that's not the view I have. That's not the view I have. It's very opportunistic that some people try to point out what's going wrong in the country, only really to aim at another party running the country. And that's not the view, that's not the direction I want to go down. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the general mismanagement. And you're not going to get me looking to see the hope in somebody else, because I've looked around and I don't see that hope. I just don't. Talking about criminality going out of control, I was reading about cops probing a shooting of a gardener at the Port of Spain mayor's home. Again, similar to the school. I read a little piece online, you know, there are those gossip sites, etc., etc., and they were saying that it was not, as the news reported, an attempted robbery. It was really more of an attempted assassination. They were aiming at the gardener, and that kind of makes sense. That kind of makes sense. I ain't know about that, Polo. I don't know about that. That kind of makes sense because when you look at the evidence there, they jumped the fence, shot the man, stole nothing. That doesn't seem very much like a robbery to me. It seems like they did what they went to do. They went to shoot the man. And if you're looking at it, I spoke about this when we were talking about criminality was out of control since 1998. I agree, actually, Adishram Narayan, I do agree. But we're seeing it get even more out of control. For criminals, for gunmen to jump the wall of the mayor of Port of Spain and attempt to murder his gardener in his yard in the daytime, that shows some level of boldness for the criminal elements, because the mayor doesn't live in the most hoodish of area. He lives in a built-up area. You're looking at this and seeing that I could go into an upper class residential community, jump the wall of the mayor of the capital city of Trinidad and Tobago, shoot someone in his yard, and escape while doing it. You're understanding how out of control the criminality is for someone to sit and think that this is a plan that could work. And you want to know what's the sad part? They were right. They were right. In Trinidad and Tobago, you could jump the wall of the mayor of the capital city, his residence, shoot his gardener in the daytime, and escape. Bro, what's your thoughts on FUL for citizens, like making it a lot more accessible? I always talk about that. I am all for it. I am all for it. Because the problem right now is not that too many citizens have guns. The problem right now is that the criminals are the only people with the guns. Criminals, the mayor's yard. The criminals know they could jump into someone's yard, run into their house, shooting, because they know the only people with the guns are us. In Arima, I spoke about that last night, there was a murder. They jumped, the guy was running away from his killers, jumped a yard, ran into somebody's house inside their bedroom, and the killers ran in after him inside of someone else's bedroom to shoot him in there. Listen, I think that no way should a bandit or a criminal be bold enough to barge in your front door. A criminal should always have on their mind when they're running in your front door that they may be greeted with lead. That should be what's on their mind. But in Trinidad it isn't, because they know that's not the reality. They know, a criminal knows, I could come with a gun, walk to your front door, you are seeing me on your camera outside of your front door. This is what I find so ridiculous. You're watching inside of your home on your phone. You're seeing me with my gun outside your house, and there's nothing you could do about it. You just have to pray that I cannot get into your house. That's all you have to do. That should never be. That should never be. It should be that any criminal knows, listen, if I make a noise outside of this guy's house, he hears me and he wakes up and he catches me in his yard, he's going to make me into a strainer. That thought alone is going to low down the kind of criminality in this country, the kind of boldness some criminals have. When you look at the car robberies, the car thefts in Trinidad and Tobago, no longer are car thefts, well, they are still, but many of the car thefts, and they're sneaking in to your office car park. No, they're coming while you're home. Take a gun and say, give me the keys, take the key and go with it. Nah, that shouldn't be. Those things shouldn't be. Let the criminals have to work extra hard for it. Because presently, this is the problem with making it difficult for citizens to get licensed firearms. The only people that care to get a licensed gun are the people that want to obey the law. You understand that, right? Like even if I am not a drug dealer, let's say I'm not in drugs, but I just don't care about the law, I will get me a gun. I will go on the black market. There are citizens in this country who are not gangsters who have illegal guns because they said, well, it's better that I have to explain my illegal gun than I get caught without it. There are people in the country like that. But they are generally the people that don't mind breaking the law more. So by creating laws are for the law-abiding citizens, that's what it seems many people don't really understand that. Laws are not for criminals. Law enforcement is for criminals. You could write laws from now till forever. Criminals don't follow the laws. That's why they're called criminals, lawbreakers. They don't care what laws you write. Do you think now that criminals are reaching the upper classes will bring some change in the approach to crime by the authorities? No, I don't. I don't think so. 2023, our houses has more bars than jail. Crime is really ridiculous. Yes, it is. It is. I don't think it's going to bring a big change in the approach to crime by the authorities because I don't know how that change is going to happen. You see, the change has to come from the police service. The police service is the law enforcement authority. The police service is currently being run, as I've said this before, I don't think the commissioner of police should come from the ranks of the police like that, because what you end up with is the same old. This present commissioner is someone who has been in the police service for 40, 30, how much ever years. What they are accustomed with is what we are accustomed with the police giving us. That's what they know. They know Trinidad Police Service for 30 years. So if we hire someone to run the Trinidad Police Service whose experience is the Trinidad Police Service for the last 30 years, how do you think they're going to run it? Not the same way they've been running it for the last 30 years. What do you think about the subtle feud between Trinidad and Tobago that pops up ever so often? I think it's ridiculous, personally. I think it's ridiculous. There shouldn't be a feud there. But once there's any kind of possibility of division, the feuds pop up. Tobagonians find that Trinidadians see them as lesser than, and I have seen that. I have seen some Trinidadians talk about it, but I don't think Tobagonians should take that seriously because it doesn't make sense. We are one country, so it doesn't make sense to be seen as lesser. And many of the average Trinidadians, if given the opportunity to get affordable land to live in Tobago, would jump at the opportunity to live in Tobago. So it's not like that. And I do think some Tobagonians, when they talk, they also talk like with a lot of entitlement. So there is that friction. Do you agree we need the previous commissioner back? I don't know if I agree with that, but I think someone even like that would also be better. Someone who has training in specializing in security services, but may not necessarily come out of the ranks of the police. It may not be him in particular, but we have security professionals in this country. There are security professionals worldwide. Like, I think the Gibbs and Iwatsky idea of the partnership, I didn't disagree totally with that. It's just that I think they didn't give them the latitude to actually be able to do their job. They brought those two in and set them up to fail, I think. But I don't totally disagree with the idea. I know some people really hated the idea of white men coming from a foreign nation to run over our police service, but if that is what is needed to better run the police service, I think that's a good idea. I want someone at the head of the service who will not blink at firing an inspector. That's what I want. But right now, you can you imagine if the commissioner has been in the police service with the fellas around his rank. He has been with his batch for the last 35 years. I'm just calling a number, I don't know. But for the last 35 years. And then in the course of some investigation, something runs across his desk and he finds out that one of these batchmates of his has been involved in some criminal activities. Do you think he's really going to take the full extent of disciplinary action against them? I don't think so. I really don't. 2023, blessings to you, Nathan, and all viewers. Thank you, Mr. Shy Guy E12, much appreciated. So yeah, I just don't think the approach to policing could change in Trinidad with the setup we have. And it seems like our current government, the PNM government, they seem like they love that. They that's their idea. And I mean, the PNM government is the establishment. Generally speaking, the PNM government is the government of more of the same. They are the government of the status quo. They are the establishment. And they seem to want to brown down that old method of policing in Trinidad. They seem to want to make sure that never changes. They had that little whisk of an experiment with Mr. Griffith, and it could nearly seem like one of the biggest problems they had with Mr. Griffith is that he was trying too many things. Which is, I think, what we kind of need of someone in that position. It could nearly seem like a lot of their problem was he tried too many things. He tried too many things out of the regular status quo. We're going to get someone who is going to be exactly like all the rest. Listen, I don't mean personal offense to the men, but Mr. McDonald Jacobs, Mr. Philbert, Mr. what was his name? Stephen Williams. Nearly all of those guys could have been interchanged in terms of their personality, their policies, their ideas, their charisma. They could have been interchanged at random with each other and no one would have noticed the difference. All of those men were like the same person over and over and over. Tell me I'm lying. Someone who pays attention to the forefront of Trinidad news. If you remember those guys, Mr. Philbert, Mr. Williams, McDonald Jacob, they're like the same person. You might watch a picture of the three of them and mistake one for the other. You hear them talking, you could probably mistake one for the other. You hear their ideas, you could mistake one for the other. It's like the same thing over and over and over and over and over. And that's what you get, I find, when you just let the ranks pull through and whoever is the next one who we owe this next one a promotion. That's something I don't like also about the public service in general. And when you hear the police, they regularly speak about that. It's my turn for promotion. I've been here so many years. Why haven't I been promoted? I must be promoted. But if you're a lazy person or a corrupt person or inept at your job, then you should not be promoted. If someone comes in last year and they're better at it, let them be promoted. But you know, public service is public service. What's your view on the proposed candidate for president of the republic? That's what I started this evening talking about. And I was saying that generally speaking, when it comes to decision making in Trinidad and Tobago, a president isn't an executive decision maker, so it's not that consequential. But it does continue along the line of changing the presidential office from the stature it once had. I think it further degrades the office by putting someone who is obviously an active partisan politician into the job. And do you think the president in TNT makes sense, Lal? Well, yes, I spoke about this, and I'll summarize it again. I do think the presidential position in Trinidad and Tobago makes sense. The idea of separating the leadership between the ceremonial, figurative head of state and the executive decision maker head of state makes sense. What people many times people don't understand that these things are ways people have figured out over lengths of time to try and avoid problems that they have seen crop up. So, for example, The problem that the United States has, where they have that president that is the executive president and is also their figurative and ceremonial head of state. The problem is you basically get the same thing like a king again. The United States has a lot of countermeasures to try and balance that. But nonetheless, you get that one man at the top, where you get that kind of king feeling very easily. And many people are very afraid, rightfully so, about getting someone in the position of king. So when you have a prime minister and a president, you get to kind of separate that figurative head of state, where people could look at for national pride and national unity and patriotism and all of that. Yeah, you could still get that side of leadership, while you could still say, but only good for nothing, and you're not saying that necessarily about the head of state. There is that kind of balance in it. There is a sense to it to some extent. Him says, do you think the current president should be speaking to or appearing to the public more? I don't know. Probably. For me, I would say yes. Probably speaking more. But it seems like this current president, she had a lot of intention of not crossing any lines. She was a senior judge before. She knew quite a bit of the law. It seems like her intention was to color well within the lines and not get anyone angry. Unfortunately, the position that she occupies, that's an impossible thing to do, but it seems like that was her intention. She did not want to stir the pot. And many people found that she should have done more stirring of the pot. She should have done more stirring of the pot. And I could see the point. If you are the figurative head of state, you should be speaking on state issues a little more. You know, comfort the people a little bit or something like that. At least back in the days with Mr. Maxwell Richards, you used to see him regularly for Carnival, so people were sure he was there. All right. It is 10:43. I've got to go pick up my little girl. I think do you think TNT should adopt an overall vote election instead of the 41 seats? Example, most votes win. No, I do not think so. I do not agree with the popular vote for leadership. I do not agree with direct democracy. We are not a direct democracy. We are a republic country. The idea of being a republic-style country is that we have people vote for the representatives, and then the representatives are supposed to represent the people in parliament. Here's why that is a good thing to some extent. If it was all about popular vote, who got the most votes win, then as a political candidate, I would aim at the population centers. The most densely populated areas would be the only places I aim to get to like me, and that's all I need to like me. The thing with a republic where you have representatives from all areas in the country, the idea is that Mayaro has an MP. So you have to make sure that you do well by Mayaro if you want that Mayaro seat. And that Mayaro seat has just as much value as the Diego Martin Central seat. So you can't only focus in Diego Martin Central and forget about Mayaro, because someone could go out there and win all of those seats and still become a leader. So I kind of like that idea. Sometimes I forget I have an MP. Yes, I could understand that. As I said this at the beginning though, that we have strayed away from the principles of the representative government nonetheless. The idea is that the people in parliament, the people up there in parliament, are not supposed to be selecting things based on their party. They are not supposed to be voting for the president based on what the PNM said to vote for. The idea is that they vote based on the people that voted for them, their constituents. So the MP, I live in Couva North. The MP for Couva North, Mr. Ravi Ratiram, when he goes to parliament, he is supposed to vote based on what the constituents of Couva North want. So if the constituents of Couva North want Miss Christine Kangaloo to be president, and the UNC doesn't like her, ideally, Mr. Ratiram is still supposed to vote for her. Unfortunately, what we end up with in our political system is one where the MPs toe party lines. So you vote for them and they don't do things based on what their constituents want. They do things based on what their party says. And those parties are basically private corporations that get to kind of do what they want. So we're in a scary place that isn't very democratic. All right, folks. Thank you for being here. That's all I have for now. As usual, I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained. This has been the Mindful Live. You can tune in again from Monday night. We don't do weekend lives. Monday night at 9:15 to 9:30 thereabouts for the next live. Thanks for answering. Of course, it's a pleasure. That's what I do. Be sure to tune in for the next one. Monday night, 9:15. I'll see you guys then. Hit up Mindful Education if you're looking for some lessons for your child, yourself. If you're looking for a more creative way to get them involved in education, go check out some of our stuff over there. Mindful with 2Ls _ education on Instagram, or Mindful Education. Recently launched the page over there on Facebook. Check us out over there. Hit that follow button. You can subscribe to me over on YouTube, Nathan Springer over there. I will see you guys Monday. Peace.